Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I am your host, Lorelei. Today's case is out of West Savannah, Georgia, and it's the case of Quinton Simon. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Diana McCarta got up around 5 a.m. every morning, not only to get her teenage daughter off to school, but to also wait for her neighbors, Leilani Simon and Leilani's boyfriend, Danny Youngkin, to drop their kids off. She had been babysitting for the couple for a little over 6 months. They had 3 young children, a 3-year-old named Zane, a 20-month-old named Quinton, and a 6-month-old little girl named Sky. Diana had met the young couple through a lady at church who used to babysit the kids, but she could no longer do it due to health problems. So she asked Diana about taking the job. Diana loved watching kids, and it would be really convenient since she lived right across the road. Leilani, Danny, and their 3 kids actually lived in the home of Billy Joel Howell and Thomas Howell, Leilani's mother and stepfather. Also living there was Leilani's adult brother, Paul. Leilani, Danny, Paul, and the kids had the house to themselves most of the time, since Billy Joe and Thomas worked out of town. When Diana had first started watching the kids, it was just the 2 boys, Quinton and Zane. Then, after Leilani had Sky, she started watching her also. She didn't charge the couple much, only $30 a day for all 3 kids. And they were there every day, Monday through Friday, like clockwork, by 6 a.m., and would stay until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, while Leilani and Danny worked together at a warehouse. And even if Leilani and Danny weren't working that day, they would still bring the kids to Diana's. Diana said there would be times that she had the kids when Leilani was supposed to be at work, but wasn't. Diana and the kids would go outside and glance over at Leilani's house and see her out on the porch smoking. When Diana looked her way, she would duck down behind something, hoping not to be seen, because God forbid she had to take care of her own kids. Sometimes the kids would stay the night with Diana and her daughters, especially Quinton. Diana and her daughters had a special place in their hearts for the almost 2-year-old. So on the morning of October 5th of 2022, when she got a text from Danny at 5:29 a.m. saying that the kids were staying home with Leilani that day, Diana thought it was strange, but she went on about her morning. Then around 9 a.m., as she and her oldest daughter were driving back home from getting breakfast, she received another text from Danny. This message was asking if she had Quinton. Instead of texting back, Diana called Danny to see what the hell he was talking about. And that's when he told her that Quinton was missing. She and her daughter rushed to Leilani and Danny's home to help them look for the little boy. They frantically ran into the house, but when they got inside, they stopped dead in their tracks. Leilani and Danny were just standing around hanging out like nothing was wrong. Leilani was smoking a cigarette, and Danny was just standing there. There was no sense of urgency, no frantically searching for the 1-year-old. Nothing. When Diane offered to help them look for Quinton, telling them that he liked to hide in closets and cabinets when he was at her house, they told her they had already looked and that they didn't need her help. That's when Diana found out that they hadn't even called the police yet, and so she told them that they needed to do that. So they called. Well, Danny called. Danny had sent the text to Diana at 9 a.m., and the 911 call didn't come in until 9:42 a.m. At least 42 minutes had passed since they had noticed that Quinton was missing, and nothing had been done. Danny seemed very calm on the 911 call, just as calm as he was when Diana had gotten to the house. But Leilani, she was no longer calm. You could hear her in the background of the call screaming that her son was missing and for them to help find her baby. Her whole demeanor had changed. Danny told the dispatcher that he was at work when his girlfriend called him and told him that her 20-month-old son was missing. He said that she had woken up around 9 that morning and her 3-year-old son and 9-month-old daughter were there, but Quinton was nowhere to be found. Units were immediately dispatched to the home at 535 Buckhalter Road to talk to the hysterical mother to find out what exactly had happened. Leilani, Danny, Diana, and Leilani's brother Paul were standing outside when the officers arrived. At that point, Diana took little Zane and went back to her house. Leilani told officers that when she woke up at 9, she noticed Quinton was gone and that the door that led outside from their part of the house was open. When they talked to Danny, he stated that the last time he had seen Quinton was around 6 that morning when he left for work. So what could have happened to Quinton in that 3-hour period? It was boots on the ground when it came to finding the little boy. Search parties were immediately formed, and everyone was looking for missing Quinton Simon. The agencies involved included the Savannah Police Mounted Patrol, a Liberty County Sheriff's Office K-9 team, a mosquito control helicopter, and within 3 hours of being called, the FBI was in Chatham County. Buckhalter Road was shut down for a while, and neighbors joined in the search. They checked people's sheds, garages, yards, and any wooded areas around the neighborhood. They searched and searched that whole first day, but came up empty-handed. While everyone was searching, investigators talked to Leilani. They wanted to get her statement and also go over the previous day's events. Leilani told them that the day before, on October 4th, the kids had gone to the babysitter while she and Danny went to work. They clocked out after being there for only a couple of hours because Leilani was having really bad tooth pain. They were able to get her into an emergency dentist where they ended up pulling a wisdom tooth right then. After leaving the dentist, they went back home, getting there at around 1:30 or 2 p.m. Danny called Diana and told her that Leilani was still a little loopy from the meds the dentist had given her and that she was going to try to sleep for a little bit while he cleaned up the house. So he asked her if they could pick up the kids at the normal time, around 4:30. Diana told him that would be fine. So, after doing whatever they were doing, Leilani said they went and got the kids and came home. She said they made dinner, gave the kids baths, and then they went to bed, just like any other normal evening. She said that Danny had gone to bed before she did, and that she was in bed by midnight. They asked Leilani about any drug use, to which she replied that she smoked marijuana and that Danny drank about a 6-pack of beer a day, but that was it. It may not seem like it because of how much the media covers it when it happens, but child abduction by a stranger is very rare. Usually when a child goes missing, it involves a parent or someone close to the child. Because of this, investigators spent no time at all obtaining search warrants for phones, tablets, and any other digital devices that was in the home. Once they started looking into Leilani's phone, red flags started going off, and they realized that she might not have told them the entire truth of what had happened the night before. So they asked her to come into the station and talk to them. They asked Leilani if there was any chance that maybe her mouth was hurting and she had left the night before to get something for the pain. Knowing that they wouldn't ask that if they didn't know she had left at some point, Leilani offered up the information that she had met with a friend at the Chevron station up the road from her house. This friend, who she said was named Misty, gave her some Oragel for her dental pain. The detective asked her what time that was, and she said that she was back home by 1:25 a.m. However, this wasn't the trip that they were talking about. They then told her that they had found a text message in her phone at 10:40 p.m. from her to Danny that said she was heading to 204. Leilani then suddenly remembered that she had gone to their drug dealer to pay back a $20 debt that Danny owed for getting a front on some weed. She said Danny was awake when she left and that Quinton had just stopped all of his crying and had gone to sleep. The detectives and Leilani then go back and forth on what is considered crying, and then asked Leilani why she hadn't told them about leaving the house when they had asked her earlier. She started crying and said that she had just forgotten and didn't think it was a big deal. She said she had been replaying the day and night over and over and she was just stressed out. She then swore that all of her kids were home by 4:30 p.m. on the 4th and went nowhere else. But now, instead of saying that she had also stayed home and went to bed at midnight, she was saying that she made 2 and only 2 runs. That was the run to 204 to pay the $20, and then later to get Oragel from her friend. This Oragel detail she gave to them accidentally, and they would definitely be checking into it. They also talked to Danny that day. They hadn't found much on his phone that was helpful to them regarding Quinton's disappearance. It showed that he had been home the night before until he left a little before 6 that morning for work. They know Danny said that he had seen Quinton that morning, so they wanted to ask him about it in more detail, but were shocked when Danny admitted that he didn't actually see Quinton that morning. Danny had said on the 911 call that he had seen Quinton before he went to work at around 6 a.m., but when he thought about it later, he realized that he didn't actually see him. He had just assumed that he was in his pack and play. This means that the 3-hour window that detectives thought Quinton had disappeared in was actually a much bigger window. They also asked Danny about the text to Diana that morning and why the kids didn't go to the babysitter like they normally did. He said that he was frustrated that Leilani wouldn't get up and go to work, so he decided if she was going to stay home, then she could watch the kids instead of paying a babysitter. Investigators believed Danny's story, and everything he said was corroborated. On Thursday, October 6th, Jeff Hadley, the police chief for Savannah Police Department, held a press conference. Hadley stated, quote, "This remains a missing child investigation at this time. There is no evidence pointing to abduction or foul play, but everything is on the table." End quote. When a reporter asked about the family and if they were cooperating, Hadley said yes, and at that point, they were victims also. It was also on this day that Quinton's grandparents, Billy Joe and Thomas, did an interview for the local news. In tears, Billy Joe said that all they wanted was to find their baby safe. Then what she said next shocked everyone. She said that she had legal custody of Quinton and his brother Zane, and that Leilani didn't always do the right thing. That sometimes she did great, but other times she didn't. Then she said she wasn't sure if she could trust her or not. That left everyone wondering, was Leilani a grieving mother whose son had been abducted from right under her nose, or did something more nefarious happen? Investigators decided to take a look into the family at 535 Buckhalter Road, and what they found was that everything wasn't sunshine and rainbows in the home. Apparently, about a year before Quinton's disappearance, Billy Joe was awarded legal custody of Leilani's sons, Zane and Quinton. Sky hadn't been born yet. Leilani had voluntarily signed her rights over to her mom in order to work on getting her life together, or so she says. But even though Billy Joe had custody of the boys, she still left them with Danny and Leilani when she and her husband were out of town, which was all the time. So I'm not sure what the point of her taking custody was when she wasn't even there to make sure the babies were taken care of and protected. Obviously, there was a reason she thought she needed to have custody, so she should be held responsible also if it was found that Leilani was responsible for whatever happened to Quinton. Investigators also found out that Leilani lied to them when she said that she only smoked weed. They found that she had a long history with substance abuse. Her preference was cocaine, but she was also known to take Percocet and to smoke meth. They also found that on September 7th of 2022, right around a month before Quinton died, the police had been called to the house on Buckhalter Road by Leilani over a dispute between her and her mom. The fight was over, of all things, the washing machine. Billy Joe wanted to use it, but Leilani had her clothes in it. So it turned into a knockdown, drag-out fight. I think the washing machine was just the icing on the cake. Nobody gets that mad over a washing machine, unless they were already having issues, which seems to be the case. Billy Joe and Leilani had not been getting along for a while, and Billy Joe had asked her and Danny to leave the house several times. Leilani told the officers that Billy Joe had pushed her, leaving a red mark on her arm, and that she was on probation, which we will talk about in a minute. And that's why she had called, because she didn't want to fight. She didn't want the fight to escalate any further. However, she didn't want to press charges against her mom either. Leilani's brother showed up, a different brother than Paul, the one who lived in the house with them, and also talked to the officer. And he had some things to say about his sister, and none of it was good. He said that his mom was fed up with Leilani because she lied all the time and would steal money from her to go buy drugs. Billy Joe ended up going with her son and leaving the house for a few days to put some distance between herself and Leilani. But that's not all she did. Billy Joe wanted them out of her house immediately. But she knew they weren't going on their own. So the next day, she went to the courthouse and filed for an eviction notice. But it was strange because even though she had custody of the boys, their names were also on the eviction notice. What in the hell kind of home were these poor kids living in? Another strange coincidence was found by investigators. Apparently, in April of 2022, 6 months before Quinton's disappearance, the state of Georgia was suing Leilani for child support for the two boys since Billy Joe had custody. What was strange was that on October 5th, the day Quinton went missing, Leilani found out that she had lost the child support battle since she failed to show up in Superior Court on September 21st. She was now being ordered to pay $150 a month in child support starting in November. The amount would only be lowered if one of the boys died. Let that sink in. The amount would only be lowered if one of the boys died. Let that sink in. Not long after Quinton went missing, Leilani told the police that she thought maybe Henry Moss, also known as Bubba, might have taken Quinton. Bubba is Quinton's biological father. All three of Leilani's kids have different fathers. Of course, we know that baby Sky is Danny's, but Zane and Quinton also have different dads. Leilani had no problems with Zane's dad, Cody, which is part of the reason Zane was her favorite child, her ride or die, if you will. However, there was bad blood between Leilani and Bubba. In fact, investigators found a Google search on Leilani's phone from October 1st, 4 days before Quinton went missing. It said, "Is it common for a mother to have resentment or even anger towards her child because of the father or another reason?" Wow, people using Google like it's their diary gets them every time. Henry Moss and Leilani had met in 2019 and had started dating. In February of 2021, Leilani had broken into someone's home through a screen door and stole $50 out of their change jar. She then proceeded to try to blame it on Bubba, but that didn't work, and she was put on probation for the offense. She was still on probation for this when the washing machine fight took place. After this happened, Bubba ended their relationship. He told investigators that Leilani was evil. He said she was a liar and a cheater and spent her days doing cocaine and smoking weed. He also said she had a violent temper and would physically assault him when she wanted more drugs. He also told investigators that Leilani would sleep with other men to get money for drugs. As far as taking Quinton, he said he hadn't had any contact with Leilani for the past 6 to 7 months. And after checking the CCTV footage, his work, and other evidence, the investigators cleared him of any involvement into Quinton's disappearance. Bubba had actually came to Savannah, Georgia, shortly after Quinton went missing and stopped by to see Billy Joe and Leilani. He was shocked at what he saw. He walked into the house, and both of them were high as hell and drunk off their asses. Bubba said there wasn't a tear to be seen. It was the complete opposite. They were laughing and having a good time with each other, almost like they were having a party, while their son and grandson was missing. Leilani is starting to give me Casey Anthony vibes. The babysitter, Diana, and one of Leilani's former neighbors, Melanie, who had also been a close friend of Leilani's, also had a lot to say to investigators about Leilani, and none of it was good either. Diana told the police that she had concerns about how Quinton was treated by Leilani. She said Leilani didn't seem to favor him as much as she did her oldest child or her youngest. She said there would be times Leilani would come home with food and would give some to Zane, while Quinton stood by and cried and begged for something to eat. She said Leilani would eventually feed him after making him upset and making him think that he wasn't getting anything. It was like she loved seeing her middle child upset and crying. She got some kind of joy from it. Diana had always had concerns about the kids' safety when they were with Leilani. There was a time that Diana saw both Zane and Quinton out in the ditch next to the road, all by themselves, with no adult in sight. She said when Danny would pick up the kids, Quinton had no problem going with him. But when Leilani picked them up, Quinton cried and didn't want to go with her. When Leilani brought the kids to Diana's, she never brought formula for Sky, never brought diapers for the kids, and never brought them clean clothes. Most of the time when Quinton came over, he had a dirty diaper, dirty clothes, and dirty rings around his neck. Diana said she hated to say that a kid smelled bad, but Quinton did. He would smell like sour milk almost every time he was dropped off. The worst thing Diana always had to do was bathe them. There were a lot of times when Billy Joe was out of town, and Diana would see bruises on Quinton, so she would call Billy Joe, Quinton's legal guardian. Billy Joe would ask Diana to keep the kids until she got back into town, whenever that may be. Diana would always agree to keep them. I mean, she had them most of the time anyway. But then, a couple of hours later, Billy Joe would call her back and tell her never mind, that she was going to give Leilani another chance. So Diana was forced to send the kids back home with Leilani, no matter how much she didn't want to. Diana straight out told the investigators that Leilani was a crappy mother and had even told her that Zane, the oldest child, was her favorite and that she never had really bonded with Quinton. What Leilani's friend Melanie had to say about her was even worse. The two had been friends for a few years, but there would be times where they would go long periods of time without talking. Melanie had never met Quinton in person, but had been around Leilani when she was pregnant with him, and would see all of the kids when they FaceTimed over the next couple of years. She said that after Leilani and Bubba broke up, Leilani told her that maybe she should have had an abortion like he had wanted, and then he would have still been with her. Leilani said this on multiple occasions. Melanie also heard Leilani call Quinton a fucking asshole and a bastard child. She also heard her spanking him over the phone, but had no idea how or where she was hitting him. By October 7th, detectives were working 18 to 20 hours a day looking for little Quinton. Dive teams were using waders and poles to search a nearby pond, and there had also been a search warrant issued for the family pool. The residents of the Buckhart Road could hear the giant pump extracting the water from the family's swimming pool. If you're wondering why they had to extract the water from the swimming pool, it's because the pool was so green you couldn't see anything in it. Chief Hadley told the public that they had exhausted the grid search of where Quinton might have wandered. He also made sure to state that Quinton's disappearance at that time was still considered a missing persons case. However, by October 10th, this had changed. On that day, Chief Hadley announced that they were looking at Quinton's disappearance as a criminal investigation from that point on. 40 FBI investigators started assisting with the investigation and researched Billy Joe and Thomas Howell's home, the last place Quinton was seen. FBI agents were observed taping dark plastic to the windows. Hadley made sure to emphasize that everyone was being looked at, except for Bubba Moss, Quinton's biological dad, who had already been cleared. Then, at the 1-week mark of Quinton's disappearance, on Wednesday, October 12th, the Chatham County Police Department and the FBI issued this statement. Quote, "Today marks 1 week since Quinton Simon was reported missing. We will be at his home, where he was last seen, with a team of search dogs and investigators. We will spend today gathering and analyzing evidence. We expect to schedule a media briefing tomorrow." End quote. Later that night, they came back and issued another statement. And unfortunately, it was what a lot of people had been thinking, but no one wanted to say. Quote, "We are saddened to report that CCPD and the FBI have notified Quinton Simon's family that we believe he is deceased. We have named his mother, Leilani Simon, as the prime suspect in his disappearance and death. But no arrests have been made and no charges had been filed." This news caused an uproar in the area, and people started gathering outside of Leilani's home and were doing some peaceful protesting, if you will. Some of these people, however, decided that they were pissed and didn't want to be so peaceful. They wanted to be heard. So they decided to knock on the windows and doors of the home and block the driveway so that no one could get out. They were even yelling and calling the family names anytime someone came out of the house. Other residents of Buckhalter Road were being disturbed by some of the protesters as well, and over 50 phone calls were made to law enforcement by these residents. So what did investigators discover that led Leilani to be in their prime suspect? They had been doing a lot of work behind the scenes while searching for Quinton. Leilani had admitted in her interview the day Quinton went missing that she had gone out twice the night of October 4th, to a drug dealer on 204 named Red to pay Danny's $20 debt, and to meet a friend named Misty at the Chevron station to get Oragel. Of course, detectives looked into both of these trips, and what they found was interesting. They first found out that Leilani didn't go to the drug dealer to pay a $20 debt of Danny's. On her phone, they found an $80 payment made through Cash App to the drug dealer on that night. After looking into it, they found that Leilani had bought cocaine and Percocet for herself. They then went and found Melissa, the girl that Leilani supposedly met up with that night to get the Oragel from. First of all, Melissa goes by Missy, not by Misty. If you're going to lie about your alibi, at least get their name right. Missy told investigators that she had worked with Leilani at a bar and restaurant called Bojangles, but it had been months since Missy had seen Leilani. This led investigators to pull surveillance video to see exactly where Leilani went that night on her second venture out of the house. They got the CCTV footage from the Chevron station, and they did catch Leilani's vehicle on it, but she didn't pull into their parking lot. Instead, she pulled into the Azalea mobile home park next door to the gas station. So they got the footage from there. They watched as Leilani drove up to the complex's line of dumpsters, got out, and threw something into them and drove away, heading back in the direction towards her house. They decided it was time to bring Leilani in and ask her some more questions. On October 12th, the same day they announced that they believed Quinton was deceased and that Leilani was their main suspect, they brought her in to talk to her about everything they had discovered. Of course, Leilani tried to cover her ass, insisting that she had met Misty for the Oragel. And when they tell her they know she never pulled into the Chevron station, but had pulled into Azalea instead, she changed her story and said that she met her next to the Chevron station at the mobile home park. They then told her that she is full of shit, and Missy had told them that she hadn't talked to her for months. Then, when they confronted Leilani about pulling up to the dumpsters and throwing something in, she had the audacity to say that it was a bag of trash from her house, and it was smelling because it had shrimp pasta in it. So why drive it to a dumpster elsewhere? That makes no sense. They then told Leilani that they knew that she knew where Quinton was, which she continuously denied. And at that point, they didn't have definite proof. So they had to let her go. But they weren't done with her yet. On October 18th, a press conference was held, and Chief Hadley told reporters that they were entering a new phase in the search for Quinton. He said early that morning a search had begun at the landfill in Chatham County. He stated that they believed little Quinton was placed in a quote-unquote specific dumpster at a specific location and was brought to the landfill by regular means. He said he fully believed that they would find Quinton's remains at the landfill. Searching a landfill for human remains is like looking for a needle in a haystack. They have to go through every pile of trash with a fine-tooth comb, hoping that they find something, but also hoping that they don't. On October 19th, the day after the searchers started working tirelessly in the landfill, Mother and Grandmother of the Year, Leilani and Billy Joe, were busy drinking shots of vodka at a Tybee Island bar and restaurant. Apparently, they drank too much and had to stay the night at a hotel in the area, where police were called twice because the mother and daughter duo were being harassed. Poor things. They ended up leaving, and no one was arrested. After word got out about their antics, they felt they needed to do damage control, especially Leilani, since she had yet to even do an interview with the media. On October 24th, both she and her mother stood in front of the camera, and it was pathetic. Billy Joe and Leilani pushed out a few tears and said that they hoped Quinton was alive and happy. Leilani said, quote, "We want him back in our arms, holding us. That's what we want. We're just hoping that he's in somebody's house and they're feeding him. And maybe they wanted a baby or couldn't have a baby. Maybe they thought they were his savior. That's our best hope at this point." End quote. She also said something strange for someone claiming to be innocent. She said, quote, "I'm not running and I'm not hiding. And if something does come up that I am at fault, I will take responsibility and I will take myself to the police station." Then Billy Joe had to pipe in with her 2 cents to say that she would walk in right beside her. Leilani then decided to try to get the heat off of her and texted an FBI agent and told him she was tired of covering for Danny. So now she's going to try to blame this on Danny, kind of like when she blamed the theft on Henry Moss. Any boyfriend of Leilani's better watch out. She then told the FBI agent that Danny was actually the one that left the house that night, and he was the one who told her to tell the Origel story. As you probably already know, the FBI agent did not buy her bullshit. On Wednesday, October 26th, the Chatham County Police Department issues a statement on the ongoing search. Quote, "We are now 3 weeks into our search for Quinton Simon, and finding his remains are the top priority for the Chatham County Police Department. We are committed to giving Quinton the professional, detailed, and thorough investigation that he deserves. Thanks to the expertise of the FBI, we have had the advantage of using every investigative and technological tool available. No expense has been spared. No work has been deemed too much or too difficult to undertake. The exhaustive search of the landfill where we believe Quinton's remains are located continues. As we told you last week, this is not a quick process. At the same time, our investigative team is working diligently to put together every piece of evidence to determine the facts in this case. The search for Quinton has been the most massive undertaking ever for our department and has involved the work of well over 100 law enforcement and civilian personnel." Then on November 10th, the search of the landfill was suspended due to Hurricane Nicole, but they picked right back up on November 14th. Everyone was working hard to find Quinton, especially those people in that landfill. As they searched for baby Quinton, they hoped and prayed that they didn't find him there, thrown away like a piece of trash. On the morning of November 18th, Diana, Quinton's babysitter, had a memorial service at her home for the little boy that she was so close to and loved like her own. Even though a couple of weeks earlier, she had a prayer circle at her house for anyone who wanted to come to pray for Quinton. Billy Joe thought she was having a memorial service at that time and came over, barged into Diana's house, and started screaming at her and accusing her of taking Quinton. The whole thing was caught on a camera by Diana's daughter. I'll post it on the Victim's Voice Facebook page. These kids didn't seem to have a chance between Leilani and Grandma Billy Joe. That same day that Diana held a prayer circle, there was a break in the case. After searching through more than 1.2 million pounds of trash, human bones were found at the landfill. After testing, it was confirmed that they did belong to Quinton Simon. During a press conference announcing that the remains had been found, a reporter questioned Chief Hadley on Leilani's whereabouts. He said that it was unknown where she was at that time, but that she wasn't considered a flight risk. It was later found that Leilani had actually signed into a treatment facility for substance abuse. 2 days after Quinton's remains were found, Billy Joe heard that Leilani was planning on signing herself out. She made one of the hardest decisions of her life, but also the right decision, and called the FBI. She let them know that Leilani was going to sign herself out and that she was not welcome back at her home. Billy Joe picked Leilani up from the treatment center, took her out to have her last free meal, and drove her to Savannah's FBI office, where she was arrested. On November 21st, Leilani sat down with an FBI agent. The agent told Leilani that they knew she had hurt Quinton, and this time, she doesn't deny it. She admitted that she was high on cocaine that night, and that when she would do drugs, she would lose touch with reality, hallucinate, and that she doesn't remember what she does. There would be chunks of time that she didn't remember. She said at times she would also hear and see things that weren't there. She said she would be so high that her brain would shut down. She told them that she struggled to remember what happened the night that Quinton disappeared. She said the last thing she remembered seeing was Quinton's face. Then she conveniently blacked out. The next thing that she remembered was driving home from Azalea Mobile Home Park, and 2 hours had lapsed. Seems funny to me that she remembers right before and right after whatever happened to Quinton, but not during. One of the investigators asked Leilani if Quinton was inside one of the 2 trash bags she had put in the dumpster, and she told him she didn't remember grabbing a trash bag. When they asked about her debunked alibi, that she went out in the middle of the night to pick up Orajel from Misty, she said that was a theory she had come up with because she couldn't remember what she had done or where she had been. So you assume you went and met a person that you hadn't talked to in months to give you some Orajel in the middle of the night? That makes no sense. The investigators did not believe Leilani's bullshit story of selective memory, and she was charged with 19 counts, an account of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of concealing the death of another, 1 count of false report of a crime, and 14 counts of making a false statement, to which she pled not guilty. The prosecution told the jury how Leilani treated Quinton differently than the other children, and not in a good way, that there was instability in her relationship with her boyfriend at the time. Danny testified that he was only with Leilani at the time of Quinton's death because of his daughter, and that Leilani had substance abuse problems. The prosecutor stated she killed him, her own son, then got into her car with his body, drove to a dumpster, and threw him away like a piece of trash. The jury was presented with over 100 pieces of evidence, including video interviews and body cam footage, and more than 40 witnesses. The jury took 6 hours to deliberate. Leilani Simon was guilty on all counts. After the jury's verdict, Police Chief Hadley made this statement: Quinton Simon truly became Chatham County's child during the weeks that our community was gripped by his disappearance. It is fitting today that 12 men and women from our community delivered the final measure of justice for little Quinton with their guilty verdict. We hope that this brings some measure of peace and justice to those who loved Quinton. Leilani Simon was sentenced on November 21st of 2024. In Georgia, a murder charge binds the judge to only 2 options for a sentence: life in prison without the chance of parole, or life in prison with the chance of parole. In order to weigh out the aggravating and mitigating circumstances to determine which sentence Leilani would get, several people spoke at the sentencing hearing, either on Leilani's behalf or on behalf of the prosecution. The prosecution stated that Leilani had still not taken accountability for murdering her son, and that she had not shown she was sorry for what she had done, only that she had gotten caught. Judge Stokes asked Leilani if she wanted to say anything at the sentencing. She declined. Leilani did release Quinton's remains to her family for a proper burial. Authorities had kept them in case more forensic testing was needed. After signing the paper to release his remains, Leilani had the audacity to say, quote, "My son's been through enough. I want my baby home," as if what he went through wasn't her fault. Before handing down her sentence, Judge Stokes said, quote, "Clearly, little Quinton Simon's life and death impacted many, many individuals, but also the community at large." Judge Tammy Stokes sentenced Leilani to life in prison with the chance of parole after 40 years, plus 10 years for concealing Quinton's body. Those sentences would run consecutively with her life sentence. So if Leilani would be eligible for parole when she is 62 years old, and even if there is a sliver of a chance they will give it to her, she would then have to serve the 10 extra years. So Leilani Simon most likely will never see the light of day again, and little Quinton got some sort of justice, even though nothing will ever bring him back. Check out the Victim's Voice Facebook page and Instagram for photos from this episode. And come back next week for a new case. Until then, peace out.